Hello everyone. This is the fifth part of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Chapter 16, Meeting Someone Interesting. Aiden's point of view. I'm impressed by how you managed to adapt to the change in situation. Furthermore, you managed to not only capture Cobra but also Sportsmaster, who was the middleman, increasing the league's chances at apprehending the main buyers behind the whole thing. The factory has been destroyed together with the rest of the formula. Wally high-fived me. Hell yeah. Our first mission was a success. Don't celebrate too early. I expect a written report from everyone on where you messed up. The mood plummeted a little at Batman's glare. That said, good job team. Batman added, taking away the tension. We looked at each other and smiled. One more thing. We turned our attention to the Dark Knight. Who did you choose to be your leader? As one, we all looked towards Aqualad. The Atlantean blinked in surprise. Are you sure? Although the question was directed to all of us, his eyes were on Robin. Boy Wonder snickered. Yeah. Just until you inevitably mess up and I end up carrying the team. We all understood he was just joking. What about you, Aiden? It was your plan that helped us complete the mission. I shrugged my shoulders. I won't lie, leading this team seems like an awesome thing to do, but, compared to you, Wally and Robin, I still have a lot more to learn. You're the right guy for this, Calder. We all believe in you. Caldurum closed his eyes, and when he opened them, I saw resolve. He stepped forward. Thank you. I accept the responsibility and I hope we all work together. The rest of the team left for the night. Robin and Wally had school tomorrow after all. Speaking of school, we were slated to join a few weeks from now. Batman had decided that a few weeks was enough time for the three of us, Gan, Superboy and I, to get accustomed to Earth. Then it was off to high school. Oh goody. I opened the door to my room after saying good night to Mgan and Superboy. I removed the visor and ran a hand through my hair. Throwing the visor on the bed, my feet took me to the bathroom for some much-needed privacy. The door to the bathroom clicked close behind me and I reached a hand into my utility belt. Out came the 2 vials. My heart hammered in my chest at how easy it had been sneaking the vials past the team and Batman. I breathed out to calm down my nerves. Batman told me explicitly to never use a strength-enhancing formula again. Not only for the added danger but also because he thought I could easily be overcome by the greed for more power. The Dark Knight, unfortunately, didn't understand why this was necessary. Bad shit was coming in the future. Wally even dies, though I couldn't remember why or how. The power to protect myself and my new friends was needed. I couldn't tell anyone that I knew the future of this planet. I had used the exercises Manhunter was teaching me to hide those memories as best as I could. So the responsibility to make sure we made it out of this alive fell to my shoulders. I opened one of the vials and drank it down. 2 days later. You know, when you told me to come with you on this patrol, I didn't think that things would get interesting this fast. I told Superboy. I was flying beside him while he was jumping across rooftops. Superman was flying ahead of us, headed to the bridge connecting Gotham and Metropolis. Well, maybe it's your presence. On my last 2 patrols with Superman, things were relatively quiet. I scoffed at his words. Relatively quiet for the Man of Steel is an alien invasion. Superboy laughed. I think you should pull on ahead, there's a school bus hanging from the bridge. I gave him a thumbs up and shot off after Superman. Superman went under the bridge to hold it up from collapsing. I flew to the front of the bus and waved my hands. A soft but strong gale pushed the bus back onto the bridge just as Superboy arrived and saved another car from plunging into the water. I went under the bus and easily lifted it up, then deposited it on a section of the bridge that was less likely to fall under its weight. I waved at the kids as they cheered in happiness. The driver breathed out a sigh of relief and muttered a thank you. I flew down towards Superboy and high-fived him. Good job, boys. Now let's. A transmission came through his earpiece and Superman answered. Slow down, Arrow. No, I'm available, I'll be there in a few minutes. He turned to address us. Sorry boys, we will have to get that apple pie another time. League business. I'll call you later, Superboy. It's Connell. Connor on Earth. Superboy said while looking away. Superman looked surprised for a bit, before smiling and patting Superboy's shoulder. That's a good name. We will talk more about that later. Then he was off. Do you think he liked it? Superboy asked me once we had escaped the reporters. We were sitting on the Daily Planet's roof, eating corn dogs. Yeah. I mean, it's a great name. Plus you acknowledged your Kryptonian heritage and subtly told him you consider him as part of your family. I comforted him, knowing how much it meant to him for someone to say that. Thank you, Aiden. We were quiet for a while. Content to watch the city. What about you? Do you have family? He asked me, making me stop chewing. I wasn't ready to talk about that. Not yet. It's getting late. I think we should head back to the cave. I stood up, avoiding the look of sadness that flashed across his face. General point of view. Santos was a businessman. He had started off as a common goon for hire, doing odd jobs for the mob, then joining Penguin once Batman had started targeting the Falcons. So Santos had wisely jumped ship. For the next half a decade, he worked for every supervillain in town, always managing to escape the long arm of the law and, more than that, Batman's radar. Santos liked to think he was a smart guy. Hence, after saving away a tidy sum from all his illegal activities, he had set up a half a dozen legal restaurants around town and used his connections to purchase a building in Crime Alley on Theater District for his less-than-legal activities. The building was a generic strip club, but down in the basement, that's where the real show took place. An underground fighting club. The show brought in money like crazy. It was where people came to see men and women tear each other apart for cash. Now, Santos knew the rules of the game. First, never bite off more than you can chew. Second, always have an in with the cops. Third, stay the fuck away from the top 5 list. And lastly, don't mess with the freaks. The former two were self-explanatory. The latter two were a bit more complicated. The top 5 list was the list of the supervillains you did not want to tangle with. Number 1 was the insane prince of all crime in Gotham, the Joker. Santos was a man of morals, however little they may be, and the Joker sickened him. The next was Harley Quinn, mostly because of her relationship with Number 1. Third was Poison Ivy. She was toxic in all the ways the law deemed it. A terrorist, in other words. Number 4 was fucking Scarecrow, and finally, the Riddler. Other villains like Two-Face at least had a modicum of respect to their goons. Santos left the underling business mostly because of the top 5. The last rule was to never mess with the freaks. By freaks, he meant Grundy, Killer Croc, Firefly, and Victor Zash. Despite keeping that rule almost judiciously, trouble came looking for him instead. His eyes tried to keep up with the clearly superhuman movements of the newest contender in the room. He was wearing a balaclava that covered his whole face, only leaving his eyes open. The man was 5 feet 9 inches and was very fit. The black t-shirt he was wearing hugged his frame tightly. Brown skin suggested he was African American. He also had on black camo pants and sport shoes. An amateur. An amateur that was clearly winning. This was his 5th fight in a row, and he had won all of them, swiftly and ruthlessly. Santos didn't like it. The guy was a superhuman, no doubt. A metahuman, likely. He had taken an almost 7 feet tall ripped giant down with a single punch. The crowd had gone silent before exploding into a wild cheer. People had started betting for him, and that meant Santos wasn't making money. Something had to change. He signaled to the event coordinator, and the man nodded. It was time to bring out his special guest. She owed him a favor after all. Aiden's point of view. 5 fights and 5 wins later, I knew the next match was going to be my last. especially when the next fighter turned out to be someone very interesting. The crowd went wild as they made way for her. The adoration was intense. Her features were slightly Asian, but she had blonde hair. She was dressed in a sports bra, fingerless gloves, and her face was hidden behind a green mask that covered the upper section of her face only. Her identity hit me like an electric shock. I was standing before my soon-to-be teammate, Artemis Croc. Her eyes were set in determination. This wasn't a fight I could take casually and expect to win. Going all out wasn't an option either. I was here to try and control the added strength from the Cobra Venom formula. Hitting her too hard would kill her. I brought my hands up and we faced each other. Artemis' eyes grew wary once she started my form, but that didn't deter her. She took a step forward and attacked. Chapter 17, Solomon Grundy. General point of view. Artemis Croc. That was her name. Mature for her age. Circumstances had forced that maturity upon her shoulders. That and her parents. One of them being a former supervillain, the other being very much still in the game. She also had a sister that had followed on her father's footsteps. Fortunately, Artemis still had her mother and she was determined to break the chain. Artemis was going to be a hero. For that to happen though, she had to pay off some debts. Get into the hero business with a clean slate. Start over without any skeletons hiding in her closet. Not more than she already had at least. Paying off the favor she owed Santos meant fighting in his underground fights. Artemis training was enough for her to dominate the scene, but the opponent standing before her was different. She could immediately tell it. This wasn't going to be an easy fight. Artemis drowned out the noise as she watched the guy. Strong but with a physique that emphasized speed and endurance. She wouldn't outlast him. That meant putting him down quickly. She ran forward and started the fight with a jab. A jab that turned out to be a feint as her leg shot off to hit his thigh, a strike that would compromise his movements. Her opponent brought his knee up and blocked Artemis' leg with the side of his shin. Artemis rebounded and transitioned to a round kick aimed at her opponent's head. The guy's foot lashed out quicker than Artemis could react to and buried itself right onto her gut. Artemis clenched her jaw and moved with the blow, flipping backwards to bleed out the momentum. She tried to bring her breathing back under control and sprang forward once more. This time she came up from the side with a left hook, trying to reduce the chances of a direct hit on her body by her fast footwork. Punches, jabs and swift kicks were exchanged in a crazy flurry of blows. The crowd cheered in ecstasy as the fight raged on. Artemis' fighting spirit was awakened by then and a smile appeared on her face. She saw the same look on her opponent's face and knew he was also enjoying it. It felt like she was sparring with Jade again. The smile slipped off her face when in a particular movement she overextended and her opponent let loose two very fast blows that sent her reeling. The kick that followed the unexpected blows sent her to dreamland. Aiden's point of view. Shit. I got lost in the fight and forgot to regulate my strength and speed. The crowd was going ballistic as I ran forward to see if Artemis was okay. The ref called the match in my favor after the countdown got to 10. I slapped her lightly and she groaned on the ground, trying to get up. Hey, you okay? She shook her head and got up gingerly. Let go of me. The words were curt and I had no choice but to comply. I followed her swaying hips as she left the ring and shook my head to get rid of the distracting thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, your new champion, Aang. The crowd started cheering me on with the name I had picked. I know, I have no originality. Bite me. Having bet $500 on myself. I went home with $5,000 due to the earlier fights. It wasn't a lot when you're working under someone like Batman who was a frigging billionaire, but it felt nice. Something about hard-earned money being fulfilling and all that. The real prize I had gotten out of all of this was the experience and getting to meet Artemis. The Cobra Venom had increased my strength by a substantial amount. Although not as big an increment as the time I took Blockbuster, it had been enough to throw my control off balance a little. That wasn't a problem anymore. I left the building and went through an alley where I had stashed a hood on a dumpster that I took out and wore. Then I walked down the street towards the nearest Zeta tube that was 4 blocks away in an old tailor shop. My footsteps were silent on the sidewalk. I came across a few people on the way that steered clear from me, showing just how cautious Gothamites were. During my walk, I noticed a figure following after me from the rooftops of the buildings I was walking under. Could it be Robin or Batman? I wondered before getting rid of that notion. They had no idea I was even in Gotham, or that I had left the cave. The only other person who would be interested in me would be Artemis. She was probably curious about me. I had beaten her easily despite the fact that she had been trained by Sportsmaster himself. And that guy was a badass. I continued walking silently, curious about whether she would actually confront me or not. I crossed the street to the next one and rounded on the corner of a building. This part of the street was a bit more populated. There was a strip club, Chinese restaurant, and even a Starbucks on it. It's like after leaving Crime Alley behind, I found myself in another world. Artemis followed me closely just as I got closer to the shop with the Zeta tube. Then something unexpected happened. The manhole cover on the road exploded in a shower of concrete and metal. The screech of tires was heard as the cars driving on the street bumped into each other. Pandemonium exploded and people started running away while a figure rose up from the sewers. 7 feet tall, grayish skin, patches of similar gray hair, ripped clothes, and a body as huge as the Incredible Hulk. Born on a Monday. My eyes widened. Solomon fucking Grundy. The zombie looked around and then roared. The air carried with it a rotten smell that made me almost gag. A woman disoriented from her vehicle crashing onto another screamed out in fright upon seeing Grundy. Grundy rounded up on her. Grundy hates loud women. The giant shambled forward intent on crushing her, and I enhanced my voice while flying forward. Pick on someone your own size, you walking Halloween freak show. Excusing the irony, Grundy turned to stare at me angrily just as my fist landed on his face, lifting him up and sending him flying away. Everyone get out of here! I shouted and ran towards the woman from before. The seatbelt was cliché enough, stuck. I grabbed the door handle and pulled it. The whole thing tore off and I threw it like a frisbee towards the loud stomps I heard coming my way. A few arrows hit the door on its way to its intended target and the thing exploded once it made contact with Grundy, throwing him back. I pulled the woman out of the car and handed her over to another civilian who was escaping. The smoke hiding Grundy's position retracted upon another roar by the undead. Christened on a Tuesday. A few arrows shot through the air and dug themselves on the ground around Grundy's position. The arrows started beeping and then exploded. Grundy crashed onto the wall of the Starbucks building and I flew forward as he got up. An uppercut sent him sliding up the building, with me following right under him. Grundy shook his head and snarled at me. He brought his hands to the side and then clapped his palms together. The blast of wind sent him flying up even faster while I negated the gale produced from shattering any glass around and hurting people. I caught a glimpse of a fast-moving figure heading across the rooftops as I increased my speed and plowed right onto Grundy's chest, going even higher and higher. Married on Wednesday. Little man die. The shout reverberated through his chest and his hand came down in a devastating strike. I twisted around him and grabbed hold of the offending limb and spinned him several times. Then I aimed for a vehicle recycling site and threw him down. Grundy's body fell uncontrollably and smashed onto the site, sending pieces of wrecked cars flying away from the crater he created with his body. The only way to take down Grundy was to kill him. He wasn't like other villains who would escape when they found themselves on the losing end, and was also a stamina beast on top of that, making him even more dangerous to fight because he didn't get tired. I floated in mid-air and concentrated on the crater. With a hand motion, a tornado with Grundy's body floating inside it appeared. I then closed my eyes and made the wind sharp. Grundy roared in helplessness as his body was sliced apart by millions of wind blades. His remains were scattered around the recycling site, and I breathed out a sigh of relief at managing to end the fight without any loss of life. I couldn't stay in Gotham for too long though. I didn't want to answer Batman's questions on why I was in his city. But before that, I looked at a certain direction and shot off into the night sky. A figure was crouched on a rooftop as I fast approached the building. The figure pulled on her bow in fright and let loose arrows at me. A tornado appeared around me and the arrows were pushed aside. I am not here to fight you. I held up my hands. This is Gotham. Seems like everybody is trying to fight somebody. I chuckled at her snark. True, but I'm not from Gotham. I was just here for sightseeing and to run some other errands. The hands on the bow lowered, but the wariness and distrust remained. What do you want? Instead of answering, my eyes roamed down her figure as I studied her. She had changed into her iconic suit. You dirty-minded pig. Whoa. Whoa. I wasn't staring at you like that. It's just that, you're a hero, right? Artemis huffed. Yes, so? Your PR sucks. I continued speaking, killing off her wave of protest. I like your outfit though, and I saw what you did to Grundy with those arrows. You're really good. Artemis blushed red. I'm on a team of young heroes too. Maybe we might see each other again. Hanging out in these circles guarantees that much. Suspicion appeared on her face. Team of young heroes? I spared a look at my watch. Yeah. Shit, I gotta go. Look, please don't tell anyone you saw me. Saying that, I turned and flew off quickly. Why? Due to my most superior senses, I caught a glimpse of the Dark Knight himself headed in our direction. I held out no hope that he wouldn't interrogate Artemis about me. The good thing is that at least he didn't catch me himself in his city. Chapter 18, The Amazo Mission. General point of view. He has not exhibited the full scope of his abilities since the incident. This begs the question, why? Was that particular incident a one-off? The glowing eyes might mean that he was not in full control of himself. If so, that means he still has more power hidden inside. Luthor swiped the image on the screen, which changed to show a hooded figure facing off against Grundy. All that remains is to find out just who you are. Aiden's point of view. I got back and went straight to my room. The next morning I was at the gym for my daily session. My eyebrows rose up in question when the door to the training room opened and in walked the team and surprisingly, Black Canary. Canary ran her eyes over my body with clinical precision, assuring me she wasn't admiring my abs but instead gauging my strength. Sweat poured down my chest as I grabbed a towel and dried off. Are you usually here this early in the morning? She asked. Aiden is very enthusiastic about training. Superboy and I even find him here at night sometimes. With the kind of freaks we deal with, I'm surprised you guys don't train more. The others looked away in a little embarrassment as I told them. I do. Superboy said with pride on his face. Kid Flash waved his hand in dismissal. Training? Please. I'm fast. And my body is always supercharged. Running at supersonic speeds is more than enough training. Yet you still can't go as fast as the Flash. The boy wonder stated. Dude, come on. Canary looked at Aiden sternly. Don't push yourself too hard, Aiden. Although you have acquired new powers, too much training can have a negative effect on your body. I nodded. I'll keep that in mind. Now, did all of you come here to tell me that, or? Black Canary is giving us lessons on close-quarter combat. We thought the training room was more appropriate than the hall. Aqualad spoke up for the first time. We followed Black Canary to the sparring section of the room. There were weapon racks on the sides, courtesy of Red Tornado, courtesy of my nagging. I wanted to learn how to use a weapon. It was after I had noticed that a weapon helped me focus the direction of my wind attacks more. All right. Let's begin. First thing you need to understand about combat is to always be the one to dictate the flow of the fight. That way, you will lead your opponent to making mistakes and leave openings that you can then exploit to take them down. Canary took off her jacket and winced in pain. She had a bandage on her left hand. It comes with the job, she told us upon seeing the concern on our faces. I'll need a partner. Maelstrom, if you will. I stepped forward as Wally complained about not being able to show off his killer moves. We faced off and I instantly found out the difference between a martial arts master like Canary and an expert like Artemis. Artemis, I could read; Canary, she was a blank slate. This wasn't going to be easy. The way you carry yourself has changed, she observed. I looked at her in faint surprise. Yeah. I learned a new martial arts skill. It's called chi blocking. She cocked her head. That is an unconventional name. Never heard of it. Part of your powers, I assume? I nodded. How many powers does he have? Wally wondered out loud. Trust me. You haven't seen anything yet. Boy Wonder was quick to reply. His response took my thoughts back to the incident when we first met. That brief moment where I was lost in thought was all Canary needed to pounce. My eyes widened as her fist came too close to my chin. I leaned back and barely escaped the blow. Her hand bent after missing my chin and the elbow landed on my solar plexus. Despite my durability, my diaphragm spasmed and pain assaulted my senses, making it hard for me to breathe. In panic, a bubble of air formed around me and pushed Canary away. She flipped and landed on the ground with the grace of a cat. From my kneeling position, I looked up and saw the odd looks on the team. A feeling of frustration hit me and I barely stopped myself from punching a hole into the ground. How could I have been taken out that quickly? Holy crap. Did you guys see that? Wally spoke up. She was so fast. Miss Martian added. Can anyone tell me what Maelstrom did wrong? He got distracted at the start of the fight, allowing you to lead the flow of the fight. Robin responded to Canary's question. Good. There's one more thing, however. Inexperience. Maelstrom is not used to fighting opponents who are better than him, skill-wise. Unfortunately, you can only build experience over time. Batman to the cave. I need you all in the hall. We wrapped up the session with Canary promising us more lessons. I made my way to the hall along with the others in a dour mood. Fortunately, Batman had no reaction to seeing me, so I knew that Artemis hadn't sold me out. Then again, the Dark Knight's mood was barely readable at all times. Yesterday, Green Arrow and Black Canary were attacked by a new menace. The two requested for backup from the rest of the League. We soon discovered that the android who attacked them could copy and replicate powers. Batman stopped to press a key on the data pad. The huge screens facing us changed to show a devastated street, wrecked vehicles, and broken buildings. Everything clicked once I saw the image of Amazo on the screen. I sucked in a deep breath, earning a strange look from Robin. Amazo was in the information I had given Batman because of how dangerous he was. One entity with the powers of the Man of Steel, the fastest man alive and an Amazonian demigod, was nigh unbeatable. Add in the other League members and you have someone only the Justice League could defeat. Android? Who built it? The design matches that of Evo's earlier experiments. Manhunter made himself known by phasing through the doors of the mission room. Evo? But he's dead. Apparently not. Black Canary sighed. Who's Evo? Miss Martian asked. Mad genius scientist, who we all thought was dead. Robin answered. It took the Justice League 4 hours to defeat the android and dismantle it into parts. That's where you come in. Batman continued. You want us to be the security detail for the parts to be transported somewhere. Robin caught on quick. Precisely. The 2 parts will be taken to 2 separate branches of the Star Labs. One in Boston, the other in New York for in-depth analysis. Excuse me. Everyone turned to me. If this Evo is as much of a genius as you say he is, wouldn't that mean he might have a way to track the individual parts? Good point. We might be attacked on the way, Aqualad said. Unfortunately, that is a risk we'll have to take. Immediate evaluation is needed in case another android with the same capabilities starts making trouble. Every precaution has been taken. We will have 4 additional trucks to act as decoys in case Evo or anyone decides to intervene. You will split into 2 undercover teams to safeguard the real trucks. Yes. Road trip. Wally jumped in glee. I'm sending you the coordinates to the pickup now. Batman out. We all looked at each other thinking the same thing. This mission will definitely not go according to plan. We got into our suits and moved out. At the pickup point, we split up into 2 teams. I was with Aqualad and Kid Flash while Miss Martian, Robin and Superboy were on the second team. We checked our comms and then proceeded to move, following behind the truck. Aqualad and Kid Flash were riding on some high-tech bikes while I was up in the sky acting as their eyes. The sky was beautiful and clear. The sun was shining down on the cornfields covering our sides and it felt peaceful. Despite the time of day, the road was desolate, allowing me to keep watch easily and still get lost in thought. My control over my powers was growing each day and I was grateful for that. The effort I put into training yielded results and I felt pumped up and confident about facing the battles that were in my future. Like Canary said, what I needed was experience. I also learned that just because I could block bullets with my body, my durability wasn't invincible. I still couldn't believe that she had managed to hurt me by targeting a weak spot. It just went to show that I still had more to learn. I would soon unlock the next sub-skill in the air element, taking me to Grandmaster level, and once I got there, it was only a matter of time before The first indication I got that something was wrong was the bright glint of glowing green eyes concealed in the cornfields. I swerved to the side, dodging the green laser beams that were quickly followed by the chattering of monkeys. Guys, we have company. Of the simian kind. I brought a finger to my ear and informed the 2 on the ground. Got it. I tried to fly down, but a group of flying monkeys besieged me from all sides. Let's try something new. Wind blade constructs appeared in my hands, twisting like miniature drills. I slashed a monkey's head off and plunged a blade into another monkey's chest. It screeched as its body twisted upon itself before exploding. My hands were a blur as I dealt with the creatures. The numbers did not reduce despite fighting off more than a dozen. The wind blades disappeared as I tried something else. My body spinned in place, creating a tornado that sent all the monkeys in my position falling down in several slashed-off pieces. Finally free, I looked at the truck and cursed out. The monkeys had flown away with the container. This marks the end of Part 5 of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.